Every time we get news of a Sonic re-release or a Sonic compilation, my mind always goes to the Sonic games that are stuck on the consoles that they are on. Games from Sonic's past that are rarely known nowadays, unless you are a fan, but every time we get one, it's always going to be on the classic games, which is very evident with the release of Sonic Origins a few years ago. But with the current state of the franchise, I understand why they would go this route. The movies have brought more people to the series in a long time, ever since the 2000s when they introduced new fans in with Sonic X on 4Kids. So having a release that allows the new fans to get into the series with the Genesis classics that put Sonic on a map with many features that make the games easier to get into is a smart move, but my heart still laments over the forgotten games that Sega seemingly doesn't want us to remember. The games that gave off this vibe the most to me are the Sonic Advance games. These are games that to many fans were worthy titles to succeed the Genesis games, since they did so much more to expand upon the classic titles that we all love, while also going in their own direction. I didn't grow up with these games as I was born after them. It was more into the Sonic Rush trilogy, but I still remember watching videos on these games, and the sprites were used in many sprite-based animations on Newsgrounds, with the most popular one at the time being Super Mario Bros. Z, which is still one of the most impressive things to watch nowadays. While there are videos out there that can explain the Sonic Advance trilogy to y'all, I also wanted to add Sonic Battle to this video, because not only is the story of that game somewhat connected to the Advance trilogy and Emerald's preparing in the Shadow Generations Dark Beginning shorts, but to show the potential that a Sonic fighting game could have now more than ever, with all the characters that Sega has introduced. This video could basically be let's remember the Sonic GBA games in a nutshell, but I think it's worth talking about these games as they are more than we see on the surface. Sonic Advance was the first Sonic game to be released on a Nintendo console, as it was released on the GBA in Japan on December 20th, 2001, whereas the other versions released around the same day as Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. So while Sonic Adventure 2 Battle was a lot more noticeable for Sonic being put on a Nintendo console, it really started with Sonic Advance a few months before Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. One thing you will know about the classic Sonic games is that they built off of each other, but one of the things that I appreciate about Dim's run with Sonic from 2001 to 2010 was that they tried to expand on the 2D Sonic formula in ways that make each game feel unique from each other to games from the past and the future. While the first game they made for Sonic with Sonic Advance was leaning more into the classic formula, as the physics are pretty close to how they felt in the classic titles, it did expand and add to it to make it feel like its own thing that makes the game worth experiencing alongside the classic titles. Sonic in this game has the same moves that he had in 3 and K, where he can spin dash and use the instant shield for a bigger hitbox when he goes to attack an enemy or a boss. But there are a few things they added to make Sonic and some of the others feel different and unique in this game. Sonic and Amy have the ability to grind on rails, which sounds exactly what it is, but the way it works in this game is very weird, as you can only grind on rails at the very top or beginning of the rail, instead of where you can land on a rail, which can lead to you going to the bottom path of the stage. It's the least egregious in this game, as rails are not on do or die segments of the stages, so I could give them a pass for this game. Each character also has a standstill attack that they can do, and Sonic's attack is a slide, though I don't really understand why Sonic needs an attack when he has the best jump attack in the game, but it's not the worst inclusion in the world. But overall, if you play the classic Sonic games, Sonic will feel right at home for you, as aside from the grinding and attacks, he feels the same as he did in 3 and K. The next character is Tails, who I would say is the easiest character to go through the game as. Tails does some of the same moves as Sonic, where he can jump into a ball and spin dash, but what makes Tails the easiest character to play through the game is his ability to fly. After you jump, you can hit the jump button again to get him to fly. He can fly for a good bit, but he will eventually get tired. So there is a limit to his flight, which I think is warranted, since if he could fly forever, he would be incredibly broken. Tails' attack is that he does a tail swipe, similar to Sonic Adventure. I ended up using the attack moves for Tails, Knuckles, and Amy a lot more than Sonic, just to break item boxes, but that just might be me because Sonic jumping on the item boxes feels more natural than with the other characters. But that's just me. Tails is the easiest character, like I said. You are mainly going to use them to find the springs to get the Chaos Emeralds, which is something I will get to later in this section. The next character is Knuckles, who similar to Tails has similar moves to Sonic, but has his own unique abilities to make him differ from them. His jump is shorter than Sonic, Tails, and Amy, but he can still reach the higher paths with his two unique abilities of gliding and climbing. Knuckles' glide is one of the fastest tools in his arsenal, as the more he glides, the faster he goes. But since it is a glide, he doesn't get the heights of Tails' flying ability. But this is made up with his climbing, which is as simple as gliding onto a wall and then going either up or down, which makes Knuckles the other character in the game I recommend finding the special springs to get the Chaos Emeralds. Other than Tails, of course. Also, for a short while, Knuckles will float on the surface of water, but there is no use I could see for it whatsoever. Knuckles is about the same as you expect if you played Sonic 3 and K. The new addition to this game, and what made this game worth getting and still worth playing nowadays, is Amy. Amy before Sonic Origins and Sonic Superstars has never been playable in a 2D Sonic game, so for this game, they had to come up with a moveset for her that would be uniquely her. The best way to describe her moveset in this game would be Sonic Adventure in 2D. Amy doesn't jump into a ball in this game, so you will have to come up with different ways to defeat enemies in this game, which means that you will have to take advantage of her hammer. The hammer on the ground is a standard attack that every character has in this game, but you can also use her hammer while in the air to attack enemies, which is the best way to deal with enemies in the game, and it has a bigger hitbox than Sonic's Instant Shield, which makes her the best character to use against boss fights. You can also use her hammer on springs, which makes springs the best way for her to get to the higher path to find special springs. You can also use her hammer on the ground to get her to get a bit more height than her regular jump, but I never really saw any real reason to use it as springs were in convenient places. Finally, to get some speed from a standstill, you don't spin dash as you can't turn into a ball, but you could dash forward a bit to get you started with going faster. Amy is probably the hardest character to play as in this game, but I think that makes her playthrough the most satisfying character to beat, which I'm all for future Sonic games to do, if we don't stick with the Superstars moveset throughout the 2D games in the future. Now to get into the levels and special stages, which are both kind of underwhelming to talk about. Now that's not to say that there aren't any positives with them, because the one thing that the GBA Sonic games really excel at are the aesthetics of the levels, with Egg Rocket being the best example in this game, as it is a mad dash against the clock in the first act of the level. You are constantly climbing up the rocket to make sure to make it in time before the rocket cuts off, which is actually how rockets work in real life, which I found pretty interesting. And there are some cool looking levels like Secret Base, Ice Mountain, and Cosmic Angel, where you are inside the main rocket itself, but I think the level design of the stages are for the most part pretty standard for what you expect for a game that is trying to expand on Sonic 3K, with it having a similar level design philosophy, but there are some levels in this game that can be flat out annoying, with my two examples being Angel Island Zone and Cosmic Angel Zone. Angel Island Zone is a level that I think is full of annoying moments that will cause you to lose a lot of lives, full of spikes and instant death pits, which actually weren't as all over the place as people made them out to be in this game, but it is also bogged down by its length, with it being the longest zone in the game to play next to Egg Rocket, but at least Egg Rocket did some interesting things. Cosmic Angel is just a level that annoys me the more I play it, since it has the whole gravity switching gimmick, but it is bogged down by instant death pits, spikes that show up at the last minute because the GBA screen is too damn small, and enemies that show up out of nowhere make you lose all of your rings. Also, the boss in this zone just sucks ass. Though in general the bosses aren't that hard and are all pretty easy, which makes them not worth mentioning, except for two that we will talk about at the end of this section. Finally, before we get to the final boss, we gotta talk about the special stages in this game. To get into a special stage in this game, you just need to find the special spring, which will send you to the special stage, which doesn't sound too bad, but it is bogged down by the fact that there is only one spring in one act of the zone, which makes finding the special springs harder than in the classic Sonic games, which makes it even more annoying when you have only one chance to get the emerald in the zone, which is way too punishing if you ask me. At least the emerald count is shared between the characters, so I recommend getting a level map of the zone that has the special spring, which is the list that you are currently seeing on the screen right now, and get them as Tails, as he is the best character for traveling throughout the level in general. But the special stages themselves are not that fun for one reason, and that reason is depth perception on the GBA. I don't know if anyone else agrees with me on this, but I find that when GBA games try to make games feel more 3D, it makes it harder to be precise, which is what Sonic Advance 1 does, as it is similar to the special stages in Sonic 2, where you need to collect a certain amount of rings to progress through the special stage and then get the Chaos Emeralds. But I have such a hard time judging if the character I am playing as is in the right position to get the rings, which also doesn't help as the moving backgrounds start to hurt my eyes. These aren't the worst special stages in the series so far, as I hate the special stages in Sonic 1 and 2 more, but I am not itching to get them again whenever I play this game again. Now it's time for the admittedly short finale to talk about, where as any character you play as, you fight two bosses before the semi-final boss. You fight the Egg Wrecker and the Egg Drillster from the first two Genesis Sonic games, which I find pretty cool. But then you fight the semi-final boss, and he was kind of hard, as I had a hard time telegraphing his beam attack more often than not. But with the right RNG, he was soon done for, and then you get the ending where the character lands on the tornado, which is a pretty standard for a Sonic game. But after you collect all of the Chaos Emeralds, You replay the final zone of Sonic to get the supersonic boss against the Super Egg Robot on the moon, which may I just say is really cool because we never really see Sonic or any other character on the moon. Most we get is them in space, which makes this boss stand out compared to other Sonic bosses, except for the time they actually fought the moon, but that game will be covered in like 10 years or so. But the Super Egg Robot is still a pretty standard final boss where you just dash into his head and hit the mini robots to get rings. It isn't that hard, and then the game just ends with Sonic coming back to Earth after a few days of being gone, which is just sort of happens, but for their first GBA game, I don't mind it. Sonic Advance overall is just a pretty cool game. It may be a standard 2D Sonic game, but for what it feels like Dips was trying to do, I really like what they were going for. Sonic Advance 2 is the weirdest Sonic game in this video, which is saying a lot given what the next game is. I say that because Sonic Advance 2 goes in a different direction from the classic Sonic games and Advance 1, but follows in ways that will show us how people feel about the Sonic games developed in the future. Let's first talk about the characters that you play as in Advance 2, which are Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and a newcomer when this game came out, Cream the Rabbit. Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles all have the same moves that they had in the first Advance game, but with the new additions that were introduced in this game that would later be expanded on in future Dims titles. But the main attraction of this game is honestly Cream the Rabbit, as she is the easiest character to play as in this game. She has the flying ability like Tails, but it isn't as strong as Tails' flying, so she isn't as broken in that field. But she has Cheese the Chow at her side, which the name is very spot on and is able to destroy any boss in seconds with the press of the B button, which makes her the character I will probably be replaying this game as for the reason I think most people would understand. In terms of additions to the moveset in this game, there is the trick system, which I like quite a bit. There are 4 types of tricks that you could do, and they have their purposes, with the forward trick having you go a bit further than you already were, the upwards trick having you gain a bit more air, the downwards trick having you go straight back to the ground, and the backwards trick, which can help you avoid enemies. What I like about these tricks is that they help make a distinction between each character. The forward trick with each character helps to show this. Sonic spins kicks when he has tricks forward, which is helpful in dealing with enemies. Tails gets a bit more air when he tricks forward, which can make reaching certain edges easier than the other characters. Knuckles glides forward when he tricks forward, but when he lands, he rolls into a ball, which makes his forward trick the best for immediately dealing with enemies on the ground. And Cream gets a bit more air compared to Sonic and Knuckles, but not as much as Tails, which feels pretty natural given that Cream can't fly as high as Tails. I overall find the trick system to be pretty fun and well implemented into the game. The first few levels don't ask much for you with the system, as you probably don't know how it works yet, but after a few levels, you will get it and you will be needing to do certain tricks, which works well for the difficulty escalation. Finally, there is the boost mode, where after running for a bit, you will enter a state where you are the fastest you have ever been and maintain it until you stop altogether. The boost mode is as simple as it sounds and would basically be the predecessor to the boost mechanic that Sonic is well known for nowadays. But that's really about it in terms of things the characters can do in this game, which means that the rest of the game is all about the level design, bosses, special stages, and its finale. And oh boy, if there's some level design in this game. My general thoughts on the campaign in this game is that from Least Forest all the way to Ice Paradise, the game is some of the best in all of Sonic, but after Ice Paradise, it is some of the worst of Sonic. What makes the first few levels of Advance 2 work is that they aren't plagued by the game design Dims is often known for, like bottomless pits, spikes everywhere, and bad enemy placement. They are high arcade levels that focus more on you making split-second decisions and to go as fast as possible to maintain that flow state. Also, this is something I never see anyone talk about, it's just that when you reach the goal, you can stop on the colored floor panels and get more points for doing that than if you just keep running, and I never understood why people don't do that, though it's probably not all that well known. Another thing to talk about, and I think all of the stages excel, is in the aesthetics of the game. Sure, there are some level tropes that you know, like the starting grass area and the city in the sky trope that has been done since Sonic 3K, but there are some cool areas in Advance 2. Hot Crater is a zone that is set above some volcanic activity. The further into the act you go, the deeper into the crater, making the game look hotter with the background moving with you in a way I haven't seen done in other stages in this game. Also helps that the song in the stage slaps. Ice Paradise is your typical ice level, sure, but it is an icy city, where you ride on slides as you can see the city in the background brimming with life. Tentacle Base is one of the first cybernetic stages in the series. I was going to say cyberspace stages, but that would confuse it with frontiers, which we are going to do. It is a world of code and data as you travel across digital roads, blocks that move, and pits that will turn you into code. At least I think it can. But by far the most memorable stage in this game in terms of its aesthetics is Music Plant, and for all of the right reasons. Sonic has never done music themed levels before, and it looks aesthetically pleasing in this game with all of the yellows and pinks blending together. With all the many ways you travel through the stage on top of xylophones, piano keys, actual notes, and springs in the levels are simples. I don't think I need to tell you that this is one of the best levels in the game, and contender for one of the best levels in 2D Sonic. But now we have to talk about the low points of the levels. When you start to hit Sky Canyon, the game starts to go downhill with how they are designed. Now these games are made on the GBA, so the visibility you have is low compared to if this was made on, say, the SNES. But I don't think the limitations affected the first Advance game all that much. Hell, even the first few levels of Advance 2 don't suffer that much from the low visibility. But when you reach Sky Canyon, it gets really annoying. You are moving so fast in these levels that the GBA can't even keep up sometimes, which makes it even worse when in the later levels, they love to spam bottomless pits, spikes, enemies that come out of nowhere, and blocks that can crush you, which put a dent into your lives. It makes going through this game even more annoying, as well as the fact that some of the level gimmicks I don't really like that much, with the blocks and techno base sometimes causing you to not know what to do next, and the cannon in Egg Utopia that can shoot you below a block causing you to lose a life. What makes it even worse is that getting into a special stage in this game is one of, if not the worst in this game compared to any other Sonic game so far and in the future. In the levels, there are 7 special rings throughout the level and bringing them to the goal, which will lead you to the special stage. Now on paper, this doesn't sound like a bad idea, but when you look at a level map of the game and see the locations of the special rings, you will realize why it sucks to get them. For a game all about going as fast as possible and doing alright inputs to get the fastest path in the game, you need to collect all the special rings, and having to sometimes go backwards for some of them, as you need to do that in certain levels, makes this process even more annoying already. Which also doesn't help is 2 things. The first thing is that the special stages in this game are piss easy. As long as you have a functioning brain cell that hasn't been dipped in the TikTok app, you'll have plenty of time to get all the rings you need for the Chaos Emeralds. But when you collect the necessary rings, you have to wait out the time, which becomes really boring on the 7th round of getting the emeralds. The second thing is that the emeralds are not shared in this game compared to Sonic Advance. If you want to get the final boss of the game, you need to collect all the Chaos Emeralds as Sonic, who is the hardest character to get all the special rings as. And when you collect all the emeralds as all the characters, you unlock Amy as a playable character, which is cool I guess, but not really worth all of the effort, if you ask me. Now of course people will tell me that, like other Sonic games, this one requires you to replay the levels and learn them inside and out to get that flow state throughout the entire level, and I am willing to tolerate that to some extent, as I can do that for games like Sonic Unleashed, one of the harder Sonic games in the series, but with Advance 2, I can't really do that because of the fact that the screen size is so small that learning and mastering the levels will just make me feel more lost than ever when I am playing them. Now to get into the bosses, which are a mixed bag overall, as some of them are fun to fight, with the Egg Totem probably being my favorite boss in the game, as you have to keep up with the thing, but also need to jump on the spinning blades of the machines to get to Eggman and take them down. But I also quite like the Arrow Egg, where you have to jump on its tail to get to Eggman, but also have to deal with the bombs that he is dropping on the stage. But this game also contains one of the worst bosses in the entire series, which is the Egg Go Round. Advance 2 bosses only require you to deal with one attack for Eggman most of the time, but with the Egg Go Round, it asks you to deal with a laser that shoots every 10 seconds, but also to deal with a hand that will try to reach you, and if you get hit in the center of the hand, you will instantly die, which is really fucking fun to deal with, and since it is a merry-go-round, you have to wait for Eggman to be at floor level for you to attack, but at least you can get rid of the laser he has. But it doesn't hide the fact that you will be on this boss for a long ass minute. The boiling point for me with this game's bosses was the final zone of the game, where you have to deal with one of the worst tropes in any game ever conceived by mankind, the boss rush. You fight every single boss in this game in order of when you fight them, including this stupid ass merry-go-round.
I hate this guy, I hate this guy, I hate this guy, I hate this guy!
And then you fight the real boss of the game, where if you are lucky enough, you will have enough lives to deal with him. But since he is also hard, you can lose that last chance you had at finishing the game, so that you can play something else. Yeah, needless to say, I don't like this zone all that much. At least the endgame of Advance 2 is really cool. When you save Cream as Sonic, she says that she is looking for her mom. As soon as you start the endgame, Eggman captures Vanilla, where Cream starts to cry, which then leads to one of my favorite Sonic moments, where he goes super to chase after Eggman, but before he goes, he gives Cream the thumbs up, which is a sweet moment fitting for Sonic. The boss in True Area 53 is better than the final boss in Advance 1, where you have to dash into his missiles to damage him, but also have to deal with his ice laser, which can freeze you, causing him to pull you towards him and suck out some of your rings, as well as dealing with him spinning towards you after a certain point. It's not an easy fight, so you have to work hard to make sure that you beat him. Then we get the final cutscene of the game, which is just really cool with the music and Sonic's determination. And that was the end of Sonic Advance 2. I could somewhat see why some people say that this is their favorite Advance game, since it contains what we love about the best Sonic games with the sense of speed and cool aesthetics, but I can never say that I'm itching to play this game again, as I find it to be one of the most frustrating Sonic games I have ever played that can be fixed with a port that includes widescreen, which may be happening sooner than you think. Fans have been working on a decompilation for Sonic Advance 2 for a few years now, and have got to a point where you can play most of it with little problems here and there. I can't wait to see this project be finished, as it will bring breath of fresh air to a game that I respect more than I like.
Congratulations!
I am not going to lie right now. Sonic Battle is a game that I had a hard time getting through for this video, and I honestly didn't feel like talking about it, but I knew I had to talk about it as it would lead into Sonic Advance 3's narrative, or as small as that narrative is. So I pushed through and got all the footage I needed for the game, and the final story footage, so that we could get through this short section. Cause in all honesty, aside from the story, there really isn't much to talk about with Sonic Battle. Gameplay wise, Sonic Battle is an arena fighter, like many anime games that were coming out around this time, like the Naruto Ninja Storm games, or even games like the My Hero Academia games. You and 1, 2, or 3 characters basically battle to either have the most points, or you get rid of all their lives, which is as simple as it gets. Your character can do a jump, standard attack, air attack, ground special, air special, and guard. Now in terms of the character variety in this game, you have 10 characters to choose from, which are Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Cream, Shadow, Rouge, Gamma, Chaos, and Emerald. Aside from Emerald, they each feel unique with their attacks, mobility, and specials, so there will be certain playstyles that you vibe with a lot more when you start to play this game. I generally like the more aerial characters like Tails and Rouge when I was playing the campaign, but that's because of a problem this game has that we will get into after understanding more of the game's controls. One thing I do think is pretty interesting in terms of the combat in this game is that you can have different ground and air specials. Before you respawn from defeat, you can choose what ground and air special you want, and I think it adds a bit of strategy and personalization to the game, as you can vibe with one special over another. Like, I don't really like Knuckles' throwing special, but I really like his Mega Punch special, so I chose that and his Air Bomb, but other than that, it is a pretty simple fighting game, so don't expect anything super in-depth when talking about it. But how do the campaigns work in this game in terms of the gameplay and core progression? During the campaign, you and Emerald will be traveling together and will be constantly battling other characters to progress through the story. And that is really all you do, and I generally find it pretty boring and frustrating at the same time. As a start, it isn't as bad, as they lead you in with simpler enemies like Tails, Rouge, and Knuckles. But the further you get into the story, they start spamming the most annoying characters to fight as in this game, with the Chaos Gammas and Gizoids that Eggman sends. They could do the same thing as Emerald, which is copy the abilities of the other characters you play as. Chaos Gammas have powerful attacks and have an annoying ability of when they die, they cause an explosion around them that could take a big chunk of damage off of you, which makes fighting them more annoying than ever. For the Gizoids, there are some characters that are not that bad to fight against, but some like Shadow have moves that are so powerful that they can take you out in a second, causing you to rage quit. Fighting them is bad enough, but you have to battle them around 2 to 3 times as they escalate in lives, which makes playing through the game feel more artificial than ever, as each campaign takes around 40 to 45 minutes to complete. My breaking point for this game was Knuckles' campaign. The game asks you to fight so many Chaos Gammas and Gizoids by himself, which is near impossible. The character balancing with the Gizoids also makes it annoying when they are carrying moves that other characters can use that are absolutely broken. Aerial characters like Tails and Rouge are fun to play with as they can stay in the air and spam their air attacks, which can destroy any health bar that the opponent has, which makes it fun to cheese for a while, but then boring to do, and then the opponents can do it, so it becomes annoying for the player. The only good thing to come from the campaign is the customization of Emerald. After each combat scenario, Emerald will learn one move from each character that was in that fight, which could be their walk, run, attacks, guards, healing, etc. You could combine and alter moves for him, which makes Emerald feel like an MMO character, where you can make him whatever you want to be. At the beginning, he is not the best, but the more you go through this campaign, you make him better, which feels like a natural story gameplay connection that I really like, despite the pacing problems the game already has. Now let's end this short section by talking about the best part about Sonic Battle, which is the story. The story starts pretty simple by having the gang showing Emerald to the rest of the characters, but during Tails and Rouge's sections, we learned that he was tied to Gerald Robotnik from Sonic Adventure 2. He was found by Eggman but was thrown away by him. But he has a lot of potential and can become better with each Chaos Emerald that is inside of him. He has the power to learn the combat abilities from the characters that he witnesses, which makes sense gameplay wise for his customization. During the campaigns, he is learning and growing through each one, developing his own personality, which is cool to see happen when we are learning new things like how he learns sadness, the difference between playing and fighting, and so many other things about him. He really is the best part of the story overall, and he is kind of the shoe-in for the player who is playing the game. But the story has to end, so we see Emerald break down in the final episode. He is about to destroy the Earth aboard the Death Egg, so Sonic has no choice but to destroy him. The character that first found him when the story started, the character that first established a link with him, the character that gave him a chance when almost everyone around him didn't. It's a little sad when you think about it. After Emerald is defeated, he contemplates his own existence, but Sonic urges him to come back home and play with his friends that he made during his journey, but is destroyed by a failsafe Gerald left into him. Sonic's friends grieve over the loss of Emerald, but Sonic, being the optimist that he always is, says that they will meet Emerald again when the world no longer has a need for weapons anymore, which gave me the same vibe as the ending of How to Train Your Dragon 3, but that is a story for another day. The story also excels in character interactions that feel natural, which is something we rarely see in the modern title stories, but I will say that the whole Amy thinking Emerald is Sonic's son and she is his mother is really fucking weird and feels like the Amy from Heroes, which I already didn't like even as a kid. But yeah, I really like the story in this game, and I wish this game got re-released as it is a unique story in the Sonic canon. Despite all of this, Sonic Battle is a game that I cannot say I enjoy all that much. As while the story is really good and I like the presentation and customization of the game, it is one of the most repetitive Sonic games ever made that I never want to touch it ever again. Now with all of that out of the way, let's get into the last Sonic game on the GBA.
Sonic Advance 3!
Nowadays, I don't even know what the consensus on Sonic Advance 3 is. On one hand, this game has gotten a lot more love nowadays, with many videos and reviews saying it is the best Sonic game on the GBA and one of Doom's best games. But on the other hand, this game was hated back when it came out, and there are still people who don't really like it and cite it as the start of
the Dark Age of Sonic.
I personally don't think this game was the start of that trend of Sonic games, but I won't deny that this game is not for everyone. The playable roster in this game are the typical characters you expect: Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and Cream. But what makes this game unique from all the other 2D Sonic games out there is the tag system. The character you first pick is the character that you will play as, and then the second character that you pick will become your partner and will change or alter your moveset and have an ability with the R button. The combo you start with in the game is Sonic and Tails. When Sonic is partnered with Tails with the partner ability, he can use him to get major height when he is on the ground. When he is in the air, he can use Tails to fly for a short bit, like in the re-releases of Sonic 3K and Mania. With this combo, you get the speed of Sonic, but a bit of the mobility of Tails. There are other combos like this in the game that can affect different characters. My personal combo for grabbing the emeralds and for Ocean Base is Knuckles and Tails. Knuckles gains a bit of height when he starts his glide, which makes it even better than it was before, mitigating the smaller jump height he typically has, but also retains a strong attack power for bosses, thicker walls, and the high jump in flight when he is partnered with Tails. This combo is really fun to use to grab the Chow in this game and break the more platforming levels in half. There are so many possibilities abilities. Do you not like jumping into the boss in Toy Kingdom? Partner with Amy to have access to her hammer to attack the boss. Do you like Amy but hate how she doesn't roll up into a ball? Then have Sonic as her partner, which gives her a proper spin dash and has her roll up into a ball when she jumps. There are many combos in this game with the character that you have, which can make one playthrough of a level not feel the same. This doesn't mean that some combos just straight up suck, like Tails and Knuckles, where Tails loses the ability to fly around and has to instead glide, which just ruins the fun of playing Tails. Though generally Knuckles is not the best partner to have with most of the combos, I tend to only find Sonic and Cream to be the best characters for Knuckles to be the partner for. If you want to know what the partners end up doing for the character that you're playing as in this game, Sonic gives you the ability to go into boost mode, Tails gives you extra height with a high jump and can fly you around, Knuckles gives you a more powerful attack, Amy gives you access to her hammer, and Cream allows you to use Chase the Chow. I am shocked that this style of gameplay never really came back in the series. We got close with Encore mode in Sonic Mania, but it's not the same as this game. One thing about this system is that since you can play as any character and tag with them with any character of your choosing, that means you play the game once and only once, which in my opinion greatly benefits the pacing of the game. If I were to think of one complaint I have with the tag system in this game, it's that to unlock Knuckles, Amy, and Cream, you need to be Sonic in Act 3 of Sunset Hill, Toy Kingdom, and Cybertrack, which means that it takes a while for the game to really open up with that system that is in place. But after Toy Kingdom, it greatly improves. In terms of the levels that are in this game, I tend to really like them all, even if they have some pitfalls. Stages in this game are a lot bigger than in Sonic Advance and Sonic Advance 2, and it makes sense for them to be as big as they are. Since there are certain combos, you can just fly through the stages, but that doesn't mean that they don't apply classic Sonic level design philosophy, as I would argue that this is the Sonic game that incentivizes you exploring the most than the classic Sonic games. There are many reasons as to why you should do this, as not only can you find secrets in corners of the level, but also the fact that there are hidden chow in these levels, which requires for you to explore the levels to the best of your ability, try to get them to achieve the best ending in the game. But aside from that, each level in terms of its layout will ask you to focus on a certain combo to make it better for you in the future playthroughs, and for the best overall time. Route 99 is a pretty solid opening level that combines speed and platforming, which is the combo that Sonic and Tails are. It's also a breath of fresh air seeing a level begin with a city in this day and age of Sonic, even though this type of aesthetic and set piece was all over the 2000s games. Sunset Hill is a remix of Green Hill, where it takes place at sunset, but this was back when Green Hill wasn't copy and pasted like the plague, so I'm fine with it here, especially with that killer track in the background. This stage starts to show that certain zones will focus on a certain combo type that you probably want, with Sunset Hill having some platforming being more focused on speed, which is not that hard at this point in the game since you have Sonic and Tails. Ocean Base is the first time to see a new combination of old level ideas, which is a combination of a water level and a base, which makes this one of the few Sonic levels that stick in my head. This level is more about platforming and vertical mobility, which is perfect since you got Knuckles at the end of Sunset Heights, so you can take advantage of his gliding and climbing abilities, which is clear from the ring placement in the levels. Just an overall good stage. Toy Kingdom and Twinkle Snow are overall good levels, but do show off the worst of this game with its enemy placements, as they can have some annoying moments with them that can ruin a run for you, or just be an inconvenience. But I do like the aesthetics of both levels a lot. I think they're fun, fast-paced levels to go through, especially Twinkle Snow, as it has more straightaways than the other levels. Cybertrack is not as visually interesting as Digital Techno Base, but I do like the scale of this level and how it feels like a maze full of code and websites that could drop you for a second if you aren't fast enough. Though this stage and the next stage do spam a lot of bottomless pits a little too much for my liking. The final zone in this game is Chaos Altar, where you are on Angel Island and making a mad dash to the Master Emerald to stop Eggman, and it is the hardest level by far, as it asks you to do some perilous platforming. Though I will say that the final level in Chaos Altar is generally agreed to be the worst level in the entire game, as it is an auto-scrolling level, where you're asked to just dodge spikes and enemies, which sounds as boring as it is. I recommend going into this level with Cream and Knuckles, as it makes Cheese circle around Cream like a shield and Cream can fly, though I generally find this zone to be the best played with Cream and Knuckles overall, so I didn't really need to change much for this playthrough. The bosses on the other hand are the easiest in the trilogy, and it really isn't a contest. boss. They typically do an attack and then hit them type of boss that plagues the later Tim's games especially, which isn't a bad thing if there was some escalation to the bosses in this game, but the only boss I really found hard in this game was the Egg Chaser in Twinkle Snow, cause it is more of a platforming challenge than a boss fight. You have to climb the tower with platforms that crumble below you, but you also have to deal with Eggman at the bottom, as he can shoot a spiky metal ball and chain at you, which can be really annoying in certain areas. For this playthrough, I did Sonic and Tails, which makes it more tolerable, but still really annoying. But someone told me that Tails and Amy were the best combo to fight the boss with, so maybe stick with that one. I doubt you'd find the egg pinball all that bad, because I went in with Sonic and Cream, which gave Sonic the ability to do an air dash that can hit the balls back at Eggman. But overall, the bosses in this game are just as easy as the bosses in the Genesis games, so there is that. Now I know this is going to be a little controversial, but I actually like how they handled the special stages in these games. You first have to find the hidden Chow that are scattered in the 3 acts of each song, which I think feels natural in this game with the combo system and the level design that is on offer that I mentioned before. Then once you find all of the Chow, you can then get a key for the special bumper in the hub of each zone, which leads to the special stage. The special stages in this game are actually pretty good. You are on the tornado and it is structured like Sonic Advance 1, where you have to get as many rings as you can to reach both goals for the Chaos Emerald. I don't know what it is about the special stage in this game, but I have an easier time distinguishing where the rings are and being able to grab them, which makes them a lot easier than the special stages than Advance 1, but also not piss poor easy like Advance 2. While I wouldn't say these are my favorite special stages in the game, I really like them and are definitely one of the better ones in the series. Now we get into the end game, where after getting all of the Chaos Emeralds, you fight the boss of Chaos Angel, which is a giant pile of shit if you don't have Cream as your partner like I did when I first fought against him. But after that, you go into the ring that contains the true final boss of the game, where you first fight Gemerald, who is the toughest he has been in this game thus far, as he has been learning how you work and trying to take you down for each time you battle him. You then walk up to the Master Emerald Shrine, where you battle Hyper Egg Robo. It is a pretty simple boss at the end of the day, where you need to jump on his stance to reach his weakness, but if you have the Sonic and Knuckles combo like I did, because it just feels right since the Master Emerald is in danger, he will go down in no time. After this, Gemerald turns against Eggman and absorbs the power of the Chaos Emeralds, turning into Ultimate Gemerald. This then leads to Sonic transforming into Super Sonic and Eggman tagging along, as you both fight against Gemerald. This boss is easier than the Super Sonic boss in Advance 2, as all you need to do in this fight is charge up your combo attack with Eggman to hit Gemerald's weak spot and then dash into him, but even with that, I still like this fight for the story reason. Gemerald is based off of Emerald for Sonic Battle, which is pretty obvious. So to see Sonic go all this way to fight Gemerald for peace must be hard for him, which is pretty telling with the music that's playing in the background that has some similar rhythms to a cutscene in Sonic Battle. The game ends with Sonic and Eggman defeating Gemerald. Gemerald is found by Cream, who brings him to Tails' Rogue Shark to have him fixed. He then becomes Cream's friend, which is so sweet and leads to some really good moments in the IDW comics, especially in the Metal Virus saga. I think you could tell that Sonic Advance 3 is my favorite Sonic Advance game in the trilogy, though I do get why some people are not into the game, as it definitely has the slowest start in the series and how it pierces out the attack system in a pretty box standard with the first 2 levels and some pathetically easy bosses. But I can look past that, as this game does what I wish more 2D Sonic games did, experiment and change up the formula with how you play them, instead of how it is now, where you must stick with the same shit and just do it again. Now, don't get me wrong, I like Mania and think Superstars has its moments, but I have more respect and gravitate more to games like Advance 3, which wasn't afraid to deviate from the norm of 2D Sonic. And that was the Sonic Advance trilogy, and to some extent, Sonic Battle. These games are far from perfect and have their detractors, but I overall had a fun time going through these games for the first time in a while, and seeing how each game evolved from the last and tried to be unique from each other, and the Sonic games from the past. I don't know if we will ever get a re-release of these games in the near future, since the Sonic brand has changed in the 2020s with the release of Sonic Origins and Sonic Frontiers, and the problems that come with THQ publishing the games. But if that day comes, I hope newcomers could see how Sonic tried to be different from the competition. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and as always, have a nice day.